Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. Today, we are talking about the Week 14 waiver wire pickups. Remember, never stop improving your team. Even if you've made the playoffs right now, you still got to pick up critical players, and I'm going to show you who you need to get. Also, had myself a great fantasy football week. I'll tell you all about it, so here we go.
Listen up. It's time for the Fantasy Maverick podcast, starring the guy who's going to help you win that fantasy championship, Jimmy Maverick.
Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. And I have to tell you, I am having an outstanding fantasy week. For as difficult as this season has been, man, it has come through in spades this week. I'm super happy. First of all, biggest news, Fantasy Football Players Championship. I had two teams make the playoffs because they do the playoffs in week 12 and 13, and both my teams won their championship. Big payout. These are high stakes leagues, so I got big payout on them, and I have the opportunity to get even more money because now weeks 14 through 16 is the kind of a race to the finish where you're just trying to score as many points as you can over those 3 weeks. It adds in your average from the first 11 weeks. Week 12 and 13 don't matter. And if you end up in the top 150 of overall for points scored, you win more cash. So I've already won two big payouts, and that happened. And so that was great. Yeah, what an awesome. It all resolved on Monday night. Everything kind of went my way. So it was a huge relief. So I was super happy there. And then on Tuesday night, my friends league, which I've been in forever, that's like my oldest league, won that game and scored enough points that I'm now the highest scoring team in the league, even though I made it in as the 5th seed on the playoffs. But for the whole season, I've been wallowing in the 7 to 10 range. So it's outside of the playoffs. Just having a crappy season. I had the second most points scored against this team. It was one of those kind of things where it didn't matter how many points I scored. 2 weeks ago, scored 167 points and lost by over 30 points to some guy who got over 200 because he played Derrick Henry and Tyreek Hill in week 12. That's the kind of season I've been having, but I made the playoffs. And now I got a good matchup. I already checked the matchup for this weekend. So I'm super happy there. Both Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins have come on right here at the end of the season, right when I need them to. I've been holding them on my bench like the whole flipping year, and finally it looks like they're starting to take charge, both those guys. I know Cam Akers is dealing with an injury, but, anyway, great fantasy week. I'm super happy, again, testament back to the drafts. The drafts I had all, for the most part, went very well. And even though not everything's going to go my way this year, like I didn't make the playoffs in my standard points league, even though I think it was the 5th highest scoring team in the league, but I was saddled with the fact that I had the most points scored against my team. It's like every league I was in, didn't matter my draft position, somehow I ended up with this sort of situation where I just had the most points. Everybody's had their best week when they were playing my team. So anyway, so that's what's going on. So we got the week 14 waiver wires that we need to talk about. And either you are in the playoffs or you are trying to make the playoffs right now. You got this the last week of the regular season for you maybe, or it's the first week of the playoffs. So I do have some names that you need to know about that you need to pick up for this week. And we're going to start right away. Let's start with the quarterbacks. And really, there's only one quarterback that I really like if you need to start a quarterback this week, all right? But I'm going to start with the other two first. I got 3 names for you here. The first one is Baker Mayfield, 38% rostered Cleveland quarterback. And boy, what a great game he had last week. Really just outstanding. 4 touchdowns, over 300 yards passing. Played against the Titans, who again are a very competitive, very good team. Not that good on the defense, though. We've known that the whole season, that the Titans defense is not that great. So, he was completing passes to like 9 different receivers during the course of that game. Each of his 4 touchdowns was to a different receiver. The run game was outstanding. Really, the Cleveland, they're right now at the number 5 seed for the playoffs. So they're the highest ranked AFC team that's not a division leader. Of course, they're in the same division as the Steelers. This team's looking really good. Now, I think Baker Mayfield is absolutely worth a pickup here. Now, just to let you know, he is playing the Ravens this week. That's his Week 14 opponent. So this is a much tougher defense that he's going to face. So I do not expect him to be as effective this week. But like I said, I think he's absolutely worth picking up and holding on your roster if you need a second quarterback for this week. Another guy who has been really disappointing this week, this whole season, is Matthew Stafford of the Detroit Lions. And I was really expecting a lot more out of Matthew Stafford. I thought he'd be much stronger. Of course, the perennial continued injury to Kenny Golladay has really hurt his value. He is right now only 55% rostered, but he had a great game last week. Again, over 400 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and a furious come-from-behind victory against Chicago. So, it was an outstanding game for Stafford. But again, he's someone who's going to have a very tough matchup this week. He gets Green Bay, who is 8th best against the quarterback position. But on the flip side, he might get Golladay back. And so if Golladay is active, I would consider starting Stafford this week just because I think he can build off of the momentum of last week, even with a tough matchup. Really, I would only start him, though, if you're super desperate. Like, if you are without a quarterback and you can get Matthew Stafford, I'd bring him in for this week. But the guy I think you need to go and get this week, and you can start this week, is Phil Rivers of the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Rivers has been nothing more than a game manager this season, but sometimes that's okay. And he's had some good games lately. This week, he did very well. Who did he play this past week? Shoot. All I have right now is, he's gotten at least 300 yards and 2 touchdowns in each of the past 3 weeks. I think that's going to continue in Week 14 because he gets the Raiders. Raiders are not a tough defense for quarterbacks. They've yielded the 10th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And so I think Phil Rivers is a pick-up and start option for this week. He is the one that I would absolutely try to get if you need a quarterback. If you're streaming quarterbacks or whatever, I think he's a great choice. So those are my quarterback selections. Now for running backs, we've got 3 names here. And like I said, I think all these guys are worth a pickup. Some of these guys are worth a start. First guy, very surprising, Ty Johnson of the New York Jets, who's only 2% rostered right now. Now, I got to say, last week was the first time in forever that I said, start Frank Gore. Frank Gore, you can start this week. And what does he do? First play from scrimmage, 2 yards, concussion, out for the rest of the game. And I had him started actually in one of those championship teams from the FFPC. So I totally lucked out that I got bailed out on all the other positions to win that game. But anyway, I do not expect Frank Gore to be back. He's probably going to miss this week. But Ty Johnson got 22 carries and 2 targets in relief of Frank Gore. He ended up with almost 20 fantasy points. And, again, the Jets have been playing pretty good, even though they're still losing, even though they still have not gotten to win this season. But check it out, man. This week they get Seattle. Seattle's a bottom 10 run defense. So I got to say, pick up Ty Johnson and start him. I think he's going to be good to go this week for your fantasy team. Now, my next guy, a little bit riskier because of the injury concerns, is Cam Akers. Now, Cam ended up with 21 carries and a target in the Cardinals game last week, but he's currently questionable. I think he's dealing with a shoulder injury. And there's a couple things, he's got that. It's a short turnaround because they're playing the Thursday night game. And it's against the Pats, who are not particularly imposing as far as a run defense, but you saw what they did to the Chargers last week, blanked the Chargers. And, if it's a game where the Rams fall behind, well, guess what? They're going to go to the air, and it's not going to be a Cam Akers kind of game. So there's a lot of risks here, but he's still absolutely worth a pickup because week 15, let's see here, what does he get? Oh, yeah, he gets the Jets in week 15. He gets Seattle in week 16. So this is a guy, you get him, but you don't play him this week, but you definitely could play him week 15 and 16 on your fantasy championship games. So look to see if he's available. He's only 53% rostered right now, so go pick this guy up. Finally, my third pickup would be Adrian Peterson, who's only 48% rostered. He's been excellent the past 2 weeks. He's gotten at least 15 touches, 2 touchdowns each game, and he's being used on the goal line, which is very, very valuable. So, the big question mark with Peterson is that Akers might be coming back, right? Not Akers, Swift. DeAndre Swift might be coming back this week. And so that could mess with his volume. But still, with that goal line work, man, I'd feel okay putting Adrian Peterson in as a flex option this week if you can get him. He gets the Green Bay defense, which is not an opposing rush defense. They are actually third best in the league for opposing running backs. So he's a pick up and start kind of player. He's a guy that I would feel comfortable starting in my flex position for this week. So, definitely look at that. So let's move on to wide receivers. Wide receivers, we've got, I got some names here. I'm going to start with the weakest of the three, though, and that would be Cole Beasley from the Buffalo Bills, 58% rostered. But his big issue, and this is the kind of player that I hate for fantasy, is inconsistent usage. Look at his usage over the past 4 weeks. 3 targets, then 13 targets. Then 4 targets, then 11 targets. That's what he's done. And in each of those high-volume games, he's gotten over 20 fantasy points. So he is a total boomer bust player. This is the kind of guy that I say is this is a daily fantasy player. Cole Beasley is the kind of guy you play for daily, not for season long. And this week, he gets a tough defense. Who does he get? Buffalo is playing Pittsburgh. Oh, God. So it's a bottom 10 matchup. We saw what Pittsburgh did to the Washington receivers last week. There was no volume on any of the Washington receivers outside of the tight end, Logan Thomas, who had a great week. But anyway, I think he's worth rostering. But it would be very hard for me to put him into I would have to be very desperate to put him into my starting lineup. But shoot, man, I mean, when he gets the volume, he produces, so you got that. Now, the next guy is a guy I left for dead. I drafted him in several leagues. I dropped him in all my leagues after about 6 weeks. But now I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm going to pick this guy back up again, and it's Michael Gallup of the Dallas Cowboys, currently 41% rostered. But he has gotten 19 targets in the past 2 weeks. These are both games with Andy Dalton back in the lineup. And he gets a great matchup for Week 14 against Cincinnati. So even though this is a crowded passing field, obviously you got Cooper, you got Lamb as well. But it's nice to see his volume pick up. And I think he's going to be a great option for Week 14. And so, the Cincinnati pass defense is not good. And so, I say go get Michael Gallup. Another guy, my third guy for wide receivers is a guy, again, left for dead, T.Y. Hilton, currently 45% rostered, but he got 11 targets and a touchdown in Week 13, and he gets a great matchup each of the next 2 weeks. He gets Las Vegas this week and Houston next week. And again, Houston is who they played last week, and he got these 11 targets on. So great player for you to pick up and potentially start for the next 2 weeks. His Week 16 matchup, not great, but again, never stop improving your team. That's always been my philosophy with fantasy football. Definitely get this guy on your team if he's available. Go get him. Now, for the tight ends, a little bit, obviously, always very thin. But the big guy I got to talk about is Logan Thomas of the Washington football team, who's currently 40% rostered. went 9 for 9 for 98 yards and a touchdown last week. He was sitting on my bench in one of my leagues, and boy, I wish I had him in the lineup. Now, Pittsburgh is a tough defense, and he did that well against a tough defense. Clearly, that was their point of attack. He gets another tough defense this week because they're playing San Francisco, who is the number one team against tight ends for fantasy. So, it's tough to say. Should I pick him up? Yes. Would I start him? Probably not this week, but he's got a great connection with Alex Smith. And, if you're in a situation where you have, someone like Dalton Schultz or, there's so many middling, mediocre tight ends out there that I think I would start Logan Thomas, probably 8th or 9th. I'd probably rank him maybe 8th or 9th this week if I was going to do that as a low-end TE1. He certainly offers a better options, in a thin position. So anyway, the other name I want to bring up, and again, only if you are super hyper desperate for a tight end, Drew Sample, Cincinnati, who's currently 1% rostered. The guy's gotten 5+ targets and 40+ yards in each of the past 2 weeks. He gets Dallas in week 14, which is a great matchup. Again, for the tight end position. So again, total desperation play. If you have no tight end, I think he's worth a pickup, and you could probably start him, but he's not. Don't expect him to do much. And if it's PPR, it's probably a little bit better than if he's not. But I'm just throwing that out there. So finally, we got defenses. I do have 2 defenses that I really like this week, and the first one is Carolina, who gets Denver at home. And the Carolina defense, coming into the season was a total rebuild. They drafted 8 rookies. 8 defensive rookies in the in the NFL draft in the spring. Well, this unit has really come together. They're really very good against just about every position for fantasy football. And, getting to play Denver, which is not a good offense, is turnover prone. That's what you want. When you're looking at defenses, you want them to play opponents that are turnover prone, that can get you those points. And Denver is certainly that kind of an opponent. So Carolina, great streaming option for week 14. I also really like Houston, and Houston's defense is terrible. But on a streaming basis, they are playing the Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Bears have a terrible quarterback situation, very much turnover prone. And that's what you're looking for. When you're looking for a fantasy defense, when you're streaming defenses, that's what you want. So I think Houston absolutely is a startable defense this week against a poor Chicago offense. So, so there you go. So, I'm going to do, we're going to do Swami tomorrow. We're going to get that up before the Thursday night game. Anyway, I want to just say thank you for everybody that's watching, that's continuing to watch the show this late in the season. I hope your team is doing good. I hope you had a great fantasy week like I did, man. Just a great week. I got just thrilled to death at how things have come through on these teams, but I've just been banging my head against a wall the whole season because I don't know how it happened, man. I don't know how I got this lineup where I happened to play the most difficult schedule of anybody in the league, and yet still I've won some championships. I got a playoff berth. Things are good, man. I'm happy to be here, right? I'm just happy to be here, and maybe more good stuff will happen over the next 3 weeks. We'll have to see. But thank you very much for watching, and we'll be back. Like I said, I'll be back again tomorrow with Swami's podcast. We'll probably get that out mid to late afternoon. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. If you got any questions about any of these players or any others, leave them down below in the comments section. I do appreciate it. Have yourself a great fantasy week. Good luck in the playoffs. Good luck if it's the last week of your regular season. Let's make things happen. Let's get that victory, all right? So have a great day, everybody.